So this is Baruch Fleischman, your lift manager, here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. It's time to look at Rabbi Mimran again. No one should really think that this is a lightweight book, something you might want to read, just, you could read it and form the ideas. It's a very detailed book. In the last shir, Rabbi Mimran, the thing I'm taking away, there's a lot in that last shir. The one thought is that the Kabbalists hold that we are really a projection of spiritual energy that is solidified. You can talk about it today in the shir today, Mitzvah Hashem, and I want to get to it as soon as I can. But he said, if you took your hand and you used an atomic microscope on it, you would find that there's almost nothing there. In other words, as you look in more and more deeply into these things, you find more and more nothingness. So his question, which he's going to ask today, is really going to be, well, then how is a hand made? How is it possible that it could be a hand if there's almost nothing there, but there is some, and somehow these particles, as we move away from the atomic level and we go, say, like to the electron microscope or a lesser microscope, you start seeing more and more physicality. But in its core, there's almost nothing there. Now, in this one, in part 2, modern science reveals insights into the spiritual worlds. So I'll do the best reading I can. Everything in here is a little bit complicated because there's a lot to think about. By sinning, so he says like this, this automatically distances Klal Yisrael with their Father in heaven. As it is written, you are attached to Hashem until you sin. Now, let's go over this. I don't know exactly how that fits here, but let's go read this here. Here it goes. Many modern physicists have postulated the existence of a faster-than-light particle known as the tachyon. If indeed this exists, then they probably form a universe in their own place and according to their own properties of physics. As the Uri says many times, everything is relative to what you're talking about, and you start getting into this deeper and deeper, that you realize there are subcategories of many, many things here which we can't see, but they're relative to themselves. Let's go on. Similar to the way protons, neutrons, and electrons form us in our universe. When we think of protons, neutrons, and electrons, we visualize them as being light, round marbles or balls, which is really, really small. This is how subatomic particles are portrayed in science books and taught in schools. Yet the pioneer theory in physics today is that these subatomic particles are not these little dots and balls of matter, but rather a group of vibrating strings. Indeed, all subatomic matter is said to be merely various degrees of resonance, vibrations, vibrating on these subnuclear strings. The whole universe then is founded upon sound, upon vibration. Now we know that there is vibrations that we can't see because now we have techniques for being able to measure them. So matter is nothing more than, let's get up here, a symphony of vibrating strings in space-time. However, there is one unique principle about matter. The vibrating strings all vibrate lower than the speed of light. Now, this is a difficult concept for a person like myself because I don't know too much about the speed of light. But he says whatever that speed is, because we say light, what are we talking about? Light is ore, right? So there's a certain speed at which it comes to us, that's what he's saying. Now, that is through the various different filters and so on and so forth. The Ein Sof Baruch Hu of speed is irrelevant, but to us it is important. So the speed at which light is moving, it is thus possible that there is a universe invisible to us, made of particles, which are sound resonance upon strings, so to speak, that travel, that is, he used a nice word, I think, modulate faster than the speed of light. So therefore, we can't see them because they're moving too fast. So that with the advances in modern physics, the realm of the invisible is no longer the domain of religion and science fiction. We have ways of measuring. We have measuring tools. The realm of the invisible is now a science fact. We all know that feelings such as love and thought exist. Nevertheless, neither of these can be subject to mathematical analysis or a theory of their operations presented. Now, exactly what this phrase is doing here, I'm not sure. So we'll see. All these particles, such as protons, neutrons, and electrons, there is by definition a cohesive bond that binds them together. Now, that's the point that he wants to make. What is it that binds them together? Comparatively speaking, there is as much space between subatomic particles as there is between planets and stars. Now, it's time to try to think about this. He says, again, comparatively speaking, because everything is relative. Everything is relative to something else. In other words, the things play off of each other. Speaking, there is as much space between subatomic particles. So think of the particles that you can't see because they're so small. But the space between them is as much space as between planets and stars. An infinite, by our measuring system, amount of distance. As this is the case, what exactly is the nature of the force that binds matter together? How do they come together? How do subatomic particles that form my hand know they belong to my hand and not to the table upon which my hand presently rests? At our human level, I can recognize forms which create the difference between my hand and the table. Now, and that's on our level because everything is very physical here. Yet at a subatomic level, in other words, you use the atomic microscope and look into it, all that exists are these little particles that bear no resemblance to what they actually form. And he's suggesting that the particles really are strings. How is it then that they know what to form? That's the point. What force binds combinations of subatomic particles into atoms and eventually molecules, etc., etc.? The answer is the power of Hashem, the Creator. Because within all of this is a benemus. As briefly mentioned above, one of the subatomic theories, right? Because we're dealing with physics and it has a lot to do with theory. One of them is that the smallest particles of matter, indeed billions of times smaller than neutrons and protons, are strings. These tiny little strings each vibrate in a different way, expressing a different frequency. Similar to a violin, one string can manifest different notes. So too, these subatomic strings each vibrate at a different resonance. Together, these strings create the orchestra of the universe. In other words, deep down, underlying all forms of matter is our four-dimensional space-time, not of any time of particle, but only of various sounds upon strings. Now he says space-time. Let's just think about that. Time is relative really to us because we live and die. But the fact is that time has a beginning and has an end. Let's say, so to speak, you can measure it. Space, a little bit more difficult, but we have the concept of up, down, right? And what do we call it? We call it, I guess it would be right, left, and cubicle. That's what is really the concept of cubic 3D. That's why I don't know if I'm saying it right, but that's the basic idea. That's what space is like. It's a three-dimensional for us. Our world of space-time is composed of those of vibrations that make up neutrons, protons, and electrons. According to Kabbalah, there exists a faster-than-light world made up of tachyons and yet unknown particles or strings. So what he's saying here, the way that I understand it, I'm going to lose a lot of place here. Let me see where I'm at. Of strings. So what he's saying here is that there is depth within depth within depth within depth, and there is an origin of the concept of these vibrations. Very interesting. So he says, if the string theory is correct, and I'm going to read it again because I got off track. If the string theory is correct, and according to Kabbalah it is, the difference between energy and physical mass is simply the frequency of vibration of the strings. Now I would say like this. So we have this phrase called soma. This really fits in. Let me bring that drawing back here. Come on, baby. Bring it back. What you're really talking about is ore. Could be that the light, the purity of the light, is beyond the concept of vibration even. But as you clothe it, it becomes more and more clothed in different types of vibrations, and every light, the lights are all different. There are lights there, so we have 10 spheros, so the lights are coming through there. So we have to see how all of them work differently. Now, our world of space-time is composed of those vibrations. The vibrations that make up neutrons, protons, and electrons, according to Kabbalah, there exists a faster-than-light world made up of tachyons and other yet unknown particles. Let us review the parameters of dimension. So he says, "Well, teach me something. Space consists of 3 dimensions." Here he's saying it better. Time is the 4th dimension. So space is what? Space is right, left, up and down. Now, how do we say that in English? I mean, I'm a contractor, should know what this is called. This is called 2 dimensions is just on one dimension, different directions. 3 dimensions is that it has height as well. So I guess the best way I could say it. According to Kabbalah, the fifth dimension, but there's a 5th dimension, which is referred to as thought. Now, this really gets deep. He says space travel is accomplished by foot, car, or plane. So we're in space on our world, and we're traveling around. Time travel, and he says this is at present, is accomplished by aging. So that's the point that I was making up before. Let me see. I got to get this up here. I don't know. I already have the right pages. I'm sorry about that. According to Kabbalah, the 5th is that which is referred to as thought. Space travel is accomplished by foot, car, or plane. Time travel is accomplished by aging. So I'm getting older. And as a result, I have a good sense of time. Through travel, though thought travel, now there's another kind. Thought travel is 2-dimensional. It moves from the dimension of good to the dimension of evil. The method of travel in this dimension is through the medium of the thinking process. This is what we've been talking about all this time. In other words, where your thought is where you are. Thought transcends the 5th dimension. Thought, therefore, is the dimension above space-time. It can travel faster than the speed of light. This fact was scientifically proven during tests of quantum mechanics by physicists performed in the 1980s. So thought is instantaneous. Interesting. Now he says, according to the Kabbalists, and this is where we'll end up here, Adam, before the fall in the Garden of Eden, had a body which was made of light. So if you read the Torah and you know Hebrew, that the word for he had a garment of or, which is spelled with an aleph, which means light, and not one of flesh and blood. Only as a result of the eating of the fruit from the forbidden tree was Adam penalized with a body of flesh. And then it was called with a different spelling. It was called by the word ayin vav resh instead of aleph vav resh, which means hide or skin. What then was the true nature of the fall of Adam? The present Adam's body of flesh and blood is composed of matter that exists in 4-dimensional space-time. In other words, our bodies, the 4th dimension, which is time. So in certain of time, we're getting older because Adam was told that he would die. In other words, our bodies are formed of those subatomic particles, which are strings that are vibrating slower than the speed of light. Now, hold that right there. I think I keep missing the pages, so I'm sorry about that. What force binds combinations of subatomic particles into atoms and eventually molecules? The answer is the power of Hashem, the Creator. So that's what we're looking for. That's Baruch Fleischman here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. This is Rabbi Mimran's book, The Ultimate Connection with God. Kol Tov.